Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by Kimberley. Pronounce it properly for me.
Milousis.
Milousis. Love it, love it. So Kimberley, welcome onto the show. Thank you very much. So tell us, who are you, where are you from, and what do you do?
Oh, it's so great to be here, Pete. And I am a proud Canadian. I come from the land of the North, which is always not cold, contrary to popular belief. It's actually quite hot today. I am an entrepreneur now. My background is a CPA tax specialist. So what I do now is very different than what I used to do. I'm a health entrepreneur. I focus on helping people be empowered with health solutions so that they can take their health and make it, the best possible physically, emotionally, mentally. And of course, I help people with their financial health too, because I raise people up to do what I do. So that's what I get the privilege of doing every day now.
Oh wow, that's a very fortunate thing to be.
Mhm.
So tell us exactly where in Canada then. You're a proud Canadian. Where do you herald
Mhm.
from?
North of Toronto or I would say it's more of a region called Caledon, and there's a little tiny hamlet called Bellefontaine. It sounds very European, I think, but Bellefontaine is just a little tiny hamlet. If you blink your eyes as you're driving through, you'll miss it, but that's where I live. Little dot.
Oh wow, that's a nice place. And is it so Canada then you're seeing all the extremes of the seasons, right?
All the extremes. Yeah. In fact, usually in a week we can have all four seasons. And funny, I have a friend who lives in Calgary, which is also Canada, but the west part of Canada. I'm kind of more central-ish east and Eastern time zone anyway. And she just got hail last week in Calgary, and it's July.
Hmm.
So you can imagine the weather here can be very erratic. Thankfully, no hail here, but it can get, from cool nights to you can't sleep at night because it's so hot all in the same week.
Nice. So yeah, you don't know whether to put on your winter coat or, you know,
Or your swimsuit.
swimsuit. Yeah, God
Yeah,
forbid you get caught out too. It's not going to be pretty.
yeah, that's why I have a pool and a hot tub, so that I'm always going to be able to be in the water warm at some place.
Hey, that's smart. You're covering all the bases. I like that. Yeah, that's a
Exactly.
good
Yeah, I
place to
love
go.
water.
So take us back then. I mean, what would you say is what does fire in the belly mean to you?
Fire in the belly is living my passion. It is being able to do what I feel like I'm most called to do, what I was created for. It is sharing that passion with other people and igniting the passion within them so that then they are living the fire that's in their belly. They're living from a place of meaning and purpose and empowerment. And so I guess that would be the best way I would describe it.
And do you have it?
I do.
Wow.
I do have a huge fire in my belly about a lot of things, actually.
You talked about living with passion and purpose. Is that something you've got to that point in your life, or is it something you're still striving for?
No. So what happened, I guess, some would say it was a midlife crisis. Some would say it was, just the aha moment, I think is a better way to explain it. But, I was working as a CPA tax specialist. I had a powerful job. I was a senior corporate tax manager at one of the largest which is now CPA firms of the world, and had a staff underneath me. I had a window office and benefits like you wouldn't imagine. And for all intents and purposes, I had everything, but I felt like I did not have what I really needed and what I really wanted. I was away from my family way too many hours. I was not, I love to move. And so when you're a CPA sitting at a desk, that is not a great thing to do. You're not moving very much. I loved what I did in the sense that I got to invest in people that are my staff, but I just knew that I was called to impact. So the day happened when I just decided along with my husband, it was a joint decision that I was going to leave my job. But the crazy thing is I wasn't leaving to go anywhere. I knew
Hmm.
that I was leaving to go to the more, but I didn't even know what the more was. And, to this day, I still can't even put my finger on exactly what it was. It was just a kind of a calling that I felt inside of me that I needed to follow. And the last day of my work on my whiteboard in my office, I wrote the poem "A Road Less Traveled," and you may know the last stanza. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And it was interesting because my office never got replaced by another employee. They kept it as kind of a rental office, so to speak, for different staff that would come in from different areas. And so when I came and visited my office a year and a half later, that poem was still on the whiteboard. They hadn't erased it. And I think it spoke to a lot of people there. So that's what got me on the initial journey. A little crazy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great that you took you had the strength or the courage or the decision to just to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Takes
But
some.
like I said, I didn't really know what I was getting into.
Mm.
And so initially what I felt, well, is, we had just, my husband and I put our marriage back together. We had separated, for all intents and purposes, it was over between us. We reconciled, we came back together, and we felt like maybe part of our why was to give people a vision for what their marriage could be. And so we thought, we'll do marriage ministry. My husband started a men's group. I started writing a book. But clearly had too much time on our hands, because it was at that period of time that I conceived for the fourth time, which may not be a big deal for some people, but my eldest at the time was turning 19. So we thought we were done. My kids are now 28, 24, 21, and 9. Big gap. This was a huge surprise to us. So when I got pregnant, we had to start reconfiguring things. Oh, what are we going to do? Do I go back to work? How am I going to support the family? What am I going to do to contribute? What's my husband going to do to contribute? And so we had a great idea. Our great idea was that we would get out of debt. We would sell our, quite expensive house in Toronto, downtown, and we sold it at a good price. And we thought, we'll take the capital from that, we'll move to the country, and we'll flip houses. Isn't that a great idea? Because my husband is really good at construction. I'm very good at, the managing the business side of things. We'll flip houses. What a great idea. So by the time we paid off all of our debt, we didn't have a whole lot of capital left over from our house purchase. So that meant that the house that we were able to buy with the capital that we had, considering we had no jobs, we couldn't get a mortgage. So we were pretty much just left with the money we had. And it was this tiny little, it probably should have been torn down house. And that's what we worked with. And we were renting somewhere else. Well, wouldn't you know it, the place where we were renting, she lost her house to the bank. We had to move out. We had nowhere to go. So we moved in to the tiny little house that he was renovating. And at that point, I always like to say that it wasn't the house that was flipping, it was us. So we were flipping. We were going crazy, this crowded into this tiny little house. And we were like, there's got to be a better way. And it was actually at that time that I got introduced to what I do now. So it was a little bit of a crazy story, but a necessary one, because I can't imagine being anywhere other than where I am now. I'm loving what I'm doing. Feel so fulfilled and be able to empower so many others.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, are you where you're supposed to be? Do you believe?
I feel like life is a journey. I don't feel like you ever arrive. I feel, like I come from a Christian background, and there's a Bible verse that expresses that you go from glory to glory. And I really feel like that is the journey. When you get to, I'll give you an example with my business. I'm a direct selling business, so in my business we have ranks, right? And I'm at the top rank of the company. And so I just figured, well, I'm going to get to the top rank, because when I get there, well, isn't that what you're supposed to do? You're at the summit at that point. Then you arrive. And I get there and I realize, now what? There's got to be something more than this. And I realized that it wasn't really about arriving at all, even the whole time during my journey. And as I reflected back on that journey, even just building my business, I realized it was about the lives that I had impacted along the way. And when I got to that top rank, I had the option to stop And January of this past year, I made this specific decision not to stop, even though I could have from a financial perspective, because I realized it was about more than just the money I was making. It was about the lives that I was impacting, and that there were other people whose lives I still needed to, put myself into, invest into. And sure enough, I got some other partners that came along after the way. So I don't think there's ever a time when you can say, are you doing everything that you're meant to do? I feel like it's a journey, and it's kind of like I love to go on hikes, and I live close to one of the largest hiking trails in North America. And when you're on a hike, there's guideposts along the way. So the guideposts show you where you're supposed to get to, but when you get to one guidepost, that's not an arrival point. That's just like, okay, you're on the right path. Now look for the next one, and then the next one. And I feel like that's really what life is about.
Mm. No, makes it's. I love the analogy there, because it is. You got to enjoy the journey too. It's
Absolutely.
you're making sure where you're going. But take us back before we get fully into it. Take us back. I mean, where are you from originally? Give us a bit about your background and your family and growing up.
Yeah, and I love to share this because, when people look at me now and they see the success of where I'm at, it's easy to make assumptions.
Mm.
And so, I do have an education, which I'm really grateful for. I had a great job. But take you back to, little wee Kimberley. When I was born, I was born into a very chaotic situation. My father was involved in any number of illegal activities, and he was not part of my mom's life on a permanent basis. He would kind of come in, she would get pregnant, he would leave. So they have 5 children together, but he never actually lived with her. He never was part of our lives.
Mm.
And he was, like I said, involved in lots of illegal activities like bootlegging and drug dealing, and he ran an escort service, so he was a pimp. So he did lots of kind of unsavory things, and my mom was then left to take care of us as best as she could, which led her, of course, that's a lot of stress, and it led her into becoming an alcoholic. So she was kind of an angry drunk. When she was
Mm.
drunk, she wasn't nice. Some people, when they're drunk, they're nicer than they were before. She was the opposite. She was an angry drunk, and so she could be very abusive. And then when I was 10, she moved in with a boyfriend who was also a drunk, more of a happy drunk, but when he drank and at other times he was sexually abusive. So I had kind of like a very unstable background. I didn't have a lot of parental input or support or, guidance. And so I want people to know that story, not because I'm necessarily proud of it, but because I want people to know that anything's possible, that your past doesn't define your future.
Mm. That's a very very tumultuous, very unsteady place to grow up in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you mentioned there's 5 kids, so where did you come in the scale of things?
Well, they saved the best to last. I'm the youngest. Yeah, and my dad actually he was married at one point before he met my mom, and he had another child. So I have a half sister as well. So there's 6 from my dad, and then 5 from my mom. And not super close, but the siblings, we get along well enough considering our brokenness. But at least we have that in common.
Absolutely. So tell us, what's your earliest memory then, going right back?
My earliest memory, you know, it's funny because I don't know if it's my earliest, but one of the things that comes up right away when you say that is I remember, so my oldest sister, I never actually lived with. All of the children of the home left home pretty early, including myself. I was taken out of the home at age 14 or 15 by the Children's Aid Society, right? So I was removed from the home. I was 15. So all of us left home pretty early. My eldest sister was no different, and she's 14 years older than me. So I don't actually remember her being in the home at all. But I do remember her visiting one time when my dad was actually there. Now, I never understood why until many years later, and I still don't even fully understand it today, but there was this enmity between my eldest sister and my father. And so when she came into the home, I just remember her head going through the wall. by him. So he took her head and put it through the drywall, and I remember the hole in the wall. And so that's one of the first memories that I can remember. I don't know how small I was, but I just never understood why. That was not a very pleasant memory. I should have a happy memory as one of my first ones, but I don't.
It's significant for, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, it stood out to me a lot.
What age were you then? You must have been super young.
Super young. So, I mean, all of the kids were still at home, and my sister would have come home to visit. So all the other kids were home. So, I mean, like that I was pretty young. I would say maybe 4, 5, maybe 4. So yeah, hard
So
to remember.
take us on through then. So 7, 8-year-old Kimberley, who would we have met if we had met you then?
7 or 8 years old. So you would have met. I was super shy, very timid. I realized, as I got older, it probably was more a reaction of, when you're the youngest, you get to observe what happens to all the siblings above. So it's just like, I think I'm just going to stay quiet and mind my own business because it doesn't look like they're doing too well with their actions. So I was more quiet. I was, I would say nice in the sense that I always, I think I tried to make myself smaller constantly, both in terms of my personality, in terms of my needs. So I didn't want to make my needs really well known. I had a hard time asking for things.
Sure.
Made it very difficult because I didn't like the idea that someone would say no, and then reject me. And so I think I was just constantly making myself small. And I know that kind of carried into my adult years until I finally got healing for that. But it was just, I guess I was very subdued as a child, very quiet, but very intelligent. I do know that. I got great marks all the way through school. And I was always, one of the teacher's pets, so to speak, because I was always answering the questions in class when I was asked. And so that's who you would have met.
Was there a bit of a pleaser gene in there just to try and maintain status quo, or what way did that
Pleaser gene, definitely pleasing. Now, this is one of the things that I've had to kind of get healing from as I grew older, because if you can imagine, my goal at that time was just like not to ruffle any feathers. And also, when you look at what my father's profession was, it was all about women kind of being groomed to please, men. And so I just had it in my head that I was supposed to make people happy. That's what I was supposed to do, just make people happy. And that's been a journey of trying to get free from that, because there's a kindness that I think that I have, and I hope that comes across. But without the balance, it can go way off, and it can become, you become a victim, and you become one who never actually speaks her mind, and you could become one who just tries to make the peace, even though that's actually not what's most loving and most helpful in the moment. And of course, as an entrepreneur who's in charge of thousands in my team right now, I can't be a people pleaser, because if I were, I wouldn't be functioning. I would be probably in a straitjacket. So yeah, that was definitely a part of my past that I had to work through and get healing for.
Sure. I'm just curious, you talk about healing. I mean, what sort of shapes and forms has that taken for you then over the years?
So many. And this is part of the journey too. Like I would never say that I've even arrived from a healing perspective, but I have worked really hard at it. And some of the forms that it has taken is a ministry that's called Restoring the Foundations. And that's literally just restoring the foundations of your life, where you work through whole lots of things. You tell your story, kind of like what I'm doing now. You work through forgiveness, because I think that there's so much power in forgiveness when you release people from the harsh things that they've done. And you also release yourself. Sometimes you need to forgive yourself. So that was a huge part of my journey. I remember writing out a whole letter where I forgave my mom. And it was just a very healing part of the journey. So they work through forgiveness. You work through what they call UGBs. So UGBs are ungodly beliefs, or unhelpful beliefs. So what beliefs do you have? Like, for example, the best thing that I can do in a situation of conflict is to please everybody and to keep the peace, right? That's an ungodly belief. That's not an empowering belief. And so you work through things like that. I also had the other side, which is when someone hurts me, the most appropriate response is to hurt them back. Not a really great belief to be hanging on to. So I had to work through the uglies. And then we go into a time it's called soul spirit hurts. And this is, you can work through forgiveness, you can break off judgments, you can, work through the unhelpful beliefs that you've been believing. But imagine that someone had broken your arm and you had worked through all of that. You still have a broken arm. And so the soul spirit hurts portion of it is to work through from a soul level the actual hurt that has been done. And we revisited some situations from the past. We invited God's presence into that. We tried to look at it from his perspective, and it really helped to shift and to heal some of those memories that had created so much damage. And so that, and then there's some kind of closing parts you do. So I did that kind of ministry several times. It's actually 15 hours. So 3 hours a day for 5 days. It's intense. But it was, and I think you take like 2 weeks just to recover from that because you're still processing, but it was so, so, so helpful. So that's one of the types of ministry that I've done, and other things have kind of been added to that.
Well, I noticed that you mentioned, your Christianity is, something, or your faith is quite strong there. Is that always been the case, or is it something coming more to play?
Yeah, no, that's not been the case, because I was brought up, you can guess that my dad wasn't following that. So he was really, really atheistic. He had a bumper sticker on his car, "Religion is bunk." He would wear an upside down cross just to irritate people. So he was really like anti-religion, anti-God. My mom was brought up in a Catholic home, like she had a Catholic background, but never followed it. And I was never taken to church, never educated about God. The only thing that I ever learned about God was I had gone to Sunday school with a friend twice, like many, many years apart, two different friends. And I had been given a Bible, I think, at school. But other than that, I didn't really know anything about God. And it was actually my brother, and he started going to this church, and I was kind of like, good, he needs that, because he had been involved in a lot of the stuff that my dad was involved in. But I thought, I'm pretty good. I'm in university. He's the one that's dealing drugs on the street. He needs this, right? I'm okay. So he invited me to church. I went for his sake. And that was the first time I really heard the message of the Bible, of Christianity. And I started, attending regularly. And, I was born again, I guess would be the words that we would use. And so I gave my life to God, and it's really been a transforming process since then.
So what age were you then? Sorry, this is 21, did you say? Yeah.
21, yeah.
Cool. It's amazing to see, the journey that you've come on, and gone through. Okay, take us back. I mean, through high school and that, what is it you wanted to do? I mean, what stage were you at there?
In high school, I just wanted to be loved. I would say that was the cry of my heart. I just wanted to be loved. I wanted to be accepted. I was a really good student. Like, I honestly believe that was the grace of God, because I got into university with partial scholarship because of my marks. I didn't have any parental support, so I had government help with that. But if it wasn't for the great marks, I would never have gotten to where I was. So I really believe that was the grace of God. So I was a great student, but I really was looking for love. So I met my husband, who's now my husband. I met him when I was 15, believe it or not. And it was actually because of him that I got put into a foster home. Now, that requires explanation. It sounds like an awful thing, but it was a good thing, I suppose. What happened was, I was dating him. I was 15 years old. He had come to visit at my mom. I was living with my mom and her boyfriend, and they were out. We just dropped in to grab something that I needed from my house, and he came in with me. But at that same time, my mom came home, and I was not allowed to have people over. So I panicked and I stuck my boyfriend, who is now my husband, I stuck him behind my bedroom door to hide him. And I'm like, okay, I got to figure this out later. So I stuck him there. But when he was there, my mother's boyfriend came into the room, and he did what he often does, which was inappropriate. And so he asked me about it later. He said, did I just see what I think I saw? And I said, yeah, he does that all the time. It's no big deal. And he's like, no, this is a big deal. And so he encouraged me to go talk to the guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor is the one that, got in touch with Children's Aid Society and the police. And that's what led to the whole conviction and all that kind of stuff. So, so he came into my life at age 15. And so I was kind of, even my relationship with him had to be redesigned, so to speak, because at the time I was looking for a father. I was looking for someone to take care of me. And as I became more mature and more healed, I wasn't looking for that anymore. And he was still trying to be that. So of course that created a lot of friction in the marriage. I would say I was just looking to be loved. I was not healthy emotionally. I would give myself away just because, again, my whole goal was to please. And so that, I think another grace was that I met my husband so early. I was 15, so kind of spared me from a lot of what would otherwise be probably a lot of damage, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. And I'm curious then, I mean, and I don't know how much you do or don't talk about it, but I mean, how sort of the abuse, is that something that sort of went on for a while with within the family, yourself?
Yes, from when I was 10 to when I was 15, taken out of the home. That would be the period of time that happened. And there's different, I don't talk about the details a lot just because I don't find it all that helpful. What I do talk about is the journey out of that, because I think it's so much more common than many want to believe that people actually experience that. And so I'm free to talk about the fact that I did experience sexual abuse, that I had to go through a court case, I had to be taken out of my home. I'm happy to talk about that because I want people to know that they don't have to live with that as their identity, and they don't have to own it. It didn't happen to them because it's something that they did. It just happened. And so it's important to make that distinction.
I'm curious then, and even with your actual father, is and sort of the anti-Christian message there. I mean, what was there? Do you think there's a reason why he was the way he was, or why is it something he had gone through? Do you know?
I can only guess. I know that he grew up in a really, really hard circumstance. Like, he tells stories of just trying to steal coal, little bits of coal so that they could light a fire and keep their place warm. And they had to often steal food. So, I mean, that their way of approaching with dealing with the poverty that he lived in was to steal. So he had learned kind of, unhelpful ways from the beginning. He probably got in with the wrong crowd, lived downtown Toronto. He was just kind of a troublemaker. My dad, for all of his warts, he's actually a super kind person that's very broken. So he can be very generous. He can be very flamboyant and very likable. But of course, everybody's wounding, adds unhelpful layers to that then, manifest in negative ways. And so even though he could be super helpful and kind and loving, he can, on the flip of a switch, he could become abusive because his own issues are triggered, right? So I don't fault him for who he is. I don't know his story. I don't have the right to really judge why he decided to make the decisions he made. But I do know that he had quite a rough background on his own, and his own dad wasn't present, which of course you can kind of see the pattern.
Sure.
And his mom was left to take care of him, and his mom was, very distant, I think, emotionally, probably because of poverty. That I'm sure that doesn't help.
Yeah. And the same then with your stepdad, where you experienced the abuse. I mean, was there something there in the background that you know of on that side? I mean,
It's so
how?
funny because when you talk about him, it's like I have a harder time being kind in my assessment of him. Just because, you know, and it's so funny because the abuse that stands out to me worse than the sexual abuse from him was the emotional abuse, and just like the constant criticism and like the constant tearing me down, and like those are the things that trigger me when I think about him. It's not even the sexual abuse. I got healed from that, but it was all of the emotional stuff and just the nattering at me constantly. That's the harder part to let go of, and so that's what I'm still clearly working through. I don't know his story. Again, he actually had a pretty decent family from what I can assess, and I met some of his siblings who seemed pretty normal and pretty, you know, like they all had solid families. So I don't know what made him decide to be, you know, what he became. I still to this day can't figure that out, but again, it's not my job to figure that out. It's my job to just work through, you know, making sure that I don't make false judgments of anybody and forgive. So yeah, I can't figure him out.
That's refreshing. I mean, you can tell how much you've actually come through already. That you have, even the language you use and your body tone as to how you've obviously processed this a lot, you know, and I'd imagine it's something you've had to spend a lot of time on. But it's refreshing to see where you're at now, you know. And I obviously don't know you that well, but it's you know, considering what you've come through, it must be quite something.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm meant to be a message of hope for people,
Mm.
because if you go through the kinds of things that I went through, and if that means thus and so, and thus and so are very negative, well, there's no hope in that. But if you can come through the background that I had, and you can overcome by the choices that you make. I mean, that's part of the reason why I wrote my course called Life More Abundantly, is I was really sitting at the age of 50 years old, reflecting back and thinking, you know, why is it that I have more physical health, emotional health, relational health, financial health, spiritual health than at any other time in my life? And I'm 50, and yet the stories that I'm hearing from tons of people that are around me are quite the opposite, that they're getting worse as they're getting older. I think it doesn't have to be a foregone conclusion that we get worse as we get older. And I feel like that's why I want to be that message of hope. I have not arrived. Like, I have got so much stuff that I work through. I have so many things that still trigger me. I'm still way too sensitive. But these are things that can be overcome. And I think that's
Mm.
the message of hope, is that
Mm.
you don't have to let your past define you, and you don't have to be a victim.
Mm. But it is interesting, and I suppose I liken this to, you know, when people talk about fire in the belly, and it actually comes back to your, you know, your poem, then The Road Less Traveled, that there was a choice, you know, and there was a point in your life when, you know, one minute you're saying, well, that's okay, or that's the way it is, to kind of going, no more. And a decision was made to go one way as opposed to another.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's question is, you know, how have you got to where you are almost, you know, that, you know, is it the people that's come into your life, or decisions, or, you know, not accepting the norm as being the way it is?
That's like saying what started World War II, right? It could give 17 answers and they're all right. Um, you know, I feel like there's a combination. I can't, you know, as much as I try to stay, you know, pretty open in terms of my answers, I can't divorce what I am from my relationship with God. Like, I honestly believe that a lot of the grace that I have to do what I do, even the decisions that I have to make, they're divinely inspired and divinely empowered and divinely strengthened. I don't know how else to explain it other than to say, but for the grace of God, there go I.
Sure.
Look at other people. So I can't really take 100% credit. I mean, on the other hand, I do know that, like you just said, we're all confronted with choices on a regular basis. I feel like Okay, can I just do like a little preach for a second?
Yeah, sure, work away. If you go too far, we'll pull you back. But no, you're cool.
Yeah. Because this to me is the crux. Is like I feel like everybody walks around as if things happen to them, and events happen to them. And the biggest lie, like if you believe that there's a spiritual battle and there's an enemy of our souls, the biggest lie that the enemy tries to get us to believe is that we are powerless. And the actual truth is that God created us as powerful. And the only reason why the enemy lies to us is to access our power. And if we wake up every day and we recognize I am a hugely powerful person and I have all this authority given to me, and I get to choose today who I'm going to give that authority to, if we approach every day like that, we can overcome. But a lot of it, a lot of the bad choices we make come from not believing the truth about how powerful we are and our ability to choose who we can grant that authority to. Okay, that's my preach.
No, it makes a lot of sense, and I think, and funny, I was just writing there as you talk about it, and our different levels. So we have our, our body, our mind, our spirit, our soul, and you use the words "I am," which I find always very interesting. Let's say, it's and saying, well, who are you? And saying, well, I am.
Yeah,
It's whatever code or context you choose to put onto that is always
exactly.
is that's your creed, that's your beliefs, and that's okay.
Yeah, what follows those two words is really powerful, isn't it?
So as you say, and I'm curious, like I say, that's the decision. I believe everyone's born with a fire in their belly, and to say, well, you could say, well, I am a victim. I was saying, well, if that's the case, then yes, you are. Or I am a powerful, empowered human being. Well, then yes, you are. That's exactly who you are. So I'm curious to know why some people, I believe we all have a fire in the belly and it stays with us till the day our mortal bodies pass. But actually, what we choose to do with that. And some people it's a roaring inferno, and other people it's just a very dim light, and they're just about cruising through life.
Yes.
It's again, it's back to the choosing. How do we choose the road, and where does that come from? And it sounds like for you that the guidance has almost come from God.
It has, like I believe that there's and this is where we can never divorce, because I don't want to come across as saying, well, it's all from God, like, sucks to be you, because like you're just either lucky that God loves you or he doesn't. I want to make sure that the human element is still very much at the forefront. Angela Duckworth, she did a really great TED talk on grit. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I've just listened to Grit. I love it. It's a great
It's
book.
so good, right? It's such
Mm.
but it's something that it's so hard to put your finger on, but you know it when you see it. It's that ability to be knocked down and to get back up again. It's that ability to just say, okay, this happened, but I'm not going to let this, change the path that I'm on. And even in my team, I do something that's called the True Grit Award, because I feel like it's one thing to rank advance and to reward rank advances, but so much better it is to reward grit that says, okay, maybe I didn't rank advance because this happened or that happened, but this is what I overcame. And I feel like the more that we highlight grit, the more that we put those stories of overcoming in front of people, the more that people align with that. I think it's just about highlighting what really success looks like. It doesn't always look like a bigger paycheck or a bigger promotion or a bigger house. It looks like getting up when you've fallen down. And I feel like the more that we put those stories, just like you're doing, in front of people, the more people will be inspired to do those things.
I like I say, I'm blown away by, like I say, your even you're taking your tone on it, and it's how it feels like. And I don't even know your full story yet, but it feels like you've actually gone more and more powerful, and you've been able to take that energy and move forward. And that's kind of why I was sort of saying at the start, saying is, are you where you're supposed to be?
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, I think you were saying there, it's a journey. It is, but a lot of people almost don't know.
Yeah.
So I always find that interesting, to see where people are at on their journey. And life is happening and that's okay, but all you need to know is you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And so today, am I where I'm supposed to be? I would say 100% yes. Yes,
Mm,
I am. What would that look like for tomorrow? Will it look the same as today? I don't know.
mm,
I'll know tomorrow. um, so I feel like it is, yeah, you're right. It's possible to know that you're on the right path, that you
mm.
are where you're supposed to be right now, without necessarily knowing what the final destination is going to be, because you see the guideposts, right? You
Mm.
see them along the way.
Are you at a stage now where you like yourself and you love yourself?
I believe I do. It took me a long time to get there, and I even felt like it was a proud thing to say that I loved myself or that I liked myself. But I recognize now that the more that I can accept myself, the less I think about myself. I
Mm.
mean, I don't have to keep checking the mirror every 10 minutes to see how do I look and be kind of, assessing, do I look good enough? I just, yeah, I look great. Now I can move on with my day, right? And if I don't look so great right now, too bad, deal with it because I know that I can. And so, yeah, it's kind of funny. I feel like I have a mission to empower women of my age because, you get to 50 and you start to think that you're less beautiful, you're less powerful, you're less, able. And I'm like, I'm just starting to figure this thing out. I'm not going to give up now. I'm just beginning. So yes, I do like myself. And that makes me be able to get over myself,
Mm.
so that if I do something that embarrasses me, it doesn't then crush my spirit. It's like, oh, that's because I'm a goofy kind of guy or girl, so it doesn't have to impact you in a negative way. You just move on. And I feel like it's really important to love yourself, to love who you are, so that you can then take your focus off yourself and put it onto other people.
That's yeah, I love that because what's interesting, you almost third partied it. So it's saying, I can't remember your exact wording, but you're saying, yes, I do believe I love myself, saying rather than saying I love myself. So
Yeah.
it's almost like sort of watching a film. It's like, yeah, well that, I love myself, and but I've viewed it. So I thought that was slightly interesting, but I love your take on it there that, you do get to the stage where you're aligned with yourself and going, I am who I am. And if you don't like it, well, I can get my hair cut, I can do whatever, but frankly, it really doesn't matter, and you are,
Yeah.
because yeah, it's awesome. To take us back, so I mean, 15 year foster family and things have moved on for you there. So I mean, what stage were you at then, and where did you go next?
In my foster family. So it was not a very happy time of my life, but an interesting time, and for this reason. And that, I do believe everything works out together for good. So what happened was when I met my boyfriend, I lived right downtown Toronto, and he lived like a good hour and a half TTC, which is our transit system. So it's about an hour and a half transit system ride away from me. He lived way, way, way out in the boonies. So we go through this whole process. He tells me to tell the guidance counselor. The guidance counselor tells the children's aide. I get taken to a foster home. Wouldn't you know it? I'm literally across the road from him. Like, what are the chances, right? So we were like a couple of minutes apart. We got a chance to kind of spend more time together. And again, I believe that was a God thing. Even though I didn't know God at the time, he was still watching out for me. And so I was there. It wasn't a great time in the home because the people were very, I think, you always hear the accusation that people do it for the money, but it is a thing, right? People do it for the money, running a foster home. And so did they care for me? As an adult, I can look back and say, I'm imagining that they did to some extent. They just did a really crappy job at showing it. And so it
You're
wasn't
such a positive person. I love this. It's like,
well,
yes.
I just don't know where they're at. It's hard, right? Because when you're in the moment, you're a wounded 15-year-old and you're looking for love and acceptance. Like, you can make all kinds of judgments. And so I can't hold anybody to that judgment. I don't know where they're at, but it just didn't feel very nice. Let's just say when in the moment. And so I didn't really enjoy being there. When I was 16, I actually left the foster home and I thought I would move back in with my mom,
Mm.
because what happened is her boyfriend So this is kind of a crappy part of the story, but what happened is her boyfriend finally got convicted and was sentenced to prison for not very long. I think it was like 3 months. It was not very long anyway. But at the end of it, I kind of thought that she would come to me, because she had been like doubting me the whole time and telling me that, anyway, she didn't believe me. So I thought at the end of it, I felt vindicated. It's like, yes, a court finally said that this is a real thing, that this really happened. And she comes to me and she says, "I hope you're happy, you liar." And I thought, that's not cool. Like, that was really, really hurtful, because I thought, and I understand she was probably just so blind, because she also was looking for love, right? And to think that someone that she loved was in doing that would have been a big, cognitive dissonance for her. Anyway, I moved back into her house because he was in prison. It was safe for me to go back, but then he left and he was taken out of prison. So he came back into the home. I had to leave. And so then I kind of just popped around. I went and lived with my dad for a bit. That didn't work out. Went to live with my sister for a bit. She told me I couldn't stay with her. So then I eventually landed on I was living with my husband, who was then my boyfriend, for a period of time, and then really wasn't welcome there because his family was super Greek. And I don't know if you've seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but that is so true, that movie, because Greek people like Greek people. And for their son to be dating somebody who wasn't Greek was not good with them. And so they tolerated me, but I wasn't all that for them. So I eventually moved out with my boyfriend at the time, and we lived on our own. And so I think I was 17 when we first got our place together. And then when I was 18, I went to university. So another tumultuous time, but I was working and getting, doing school all the way through that period.
It's funny you bring up grit, because I think grit is what's coming through there. Is like, no matter what's going on in external environment and things, you have continued, it feels, to be, change your environment, change your situation regardless of what's going on around you, which shows a true grit.
Yeah, and it's so funny because as I reflect back on it, I think that's a horrible thing to happen to somebody. But when you're in it, you're just in it. You just deal with it. It's like, okay, you can't stay here. Well, now what? And I have to say, I don't know if you've ever done Clifton Strengths.
No.
It's actually a really brilliant way we like to emphasize in my business. We like to emphasize leading through your strengths. So not trying to compare yourself to somebody else because you're, incomparably unique. And so when you go through the Clifton Strengths, it's done by Gallup. They show you what your top strengths are. And my number one strength, it turns out, is strategy. I think that's been pretty helpful to me through my whole journey, because it's just like, okay, what's the next move, right? I'm just constantly thinking strategy. How can I, make this work? And so I guess that really served me.
I was going to say strategy, and surely resistance or resilience must be in there as well.
I'd have to look it up.
I was going to say, it's like, yeah, just to keep going. That's that's something else. But yeah, the strategy to survive is key as well. But that would sort of play as well, I suppose, to almost a pleaser. They're sort of strategically, searching for, as you said, searching for love, searching for connection, searching for where you can get your energy. So it's a very, very interesting development out of that.
Yeah, at the beginning, I think it was strategically trying to stay out of someone's reach, either through being hit or through being molested or whatever, right? You're just trying to be strategic about how you can avoid all of that. And then thankfully it turned into a more beneficial type of strategy, a more positive type of strategy after that.
Not that, I mean, it's never right. I'm just trying to work out. So this was really through, this was 70s to 80s. Is that right? Have I got my math right?
So let's see. I'm trying to figure it out. I went to university at 1988 is when I started. So yeah, it would have been mid 80s.
Yeah. So I mean, I said, not that it makes it any better or worse. You know, it's just different times. You know, because while you would hope, and you can only hope that the likes of that wouldn't happen as much these days. You know, and all the rest. But you know, it's funny how, yeah, life's different. You
It
know.
is different. Yeah.
So you college, what
University.
university?
Yeah.
What were you? What was your major? What do you call it? You call it major, don't you?
Yes, we
What was
do.
your
Yeah.
course?
So it was funny because, like I said, I did well in school, but had no clue what I was going to study. And in university, I just knew that that was something I wanted to do because, again, I think I do have competition, I think, somewhere in my top strengths. And so you always want to be the best, right? You have to do the best. You have to get the highest marks and you have to get the best kind of education. And so what's the best education? Well, university. So that makes sense. I'm going to do university. So then what do you study? Well, it turns out that my mom was actually a bookkeeper and she worked as an accountant. So they did a career day at my high school, and one of the options was to go and to learn about the different types of accounting. And so I thought, okay, well, my mom was an accountant. That makes sense. I'll go to that one. So I went to that one. I don't remember much of what the fellow said, but he was explaining the difference between a CGA, a CMA, and what was then called a CA, which is now CPA. Okay, so again, I don't remember much about what he said, but I went to him at the end and I said, which one makes the most money? And he kind of hemmed and hawed and he said, well, probably CA. And I said, okay. And so then I researched and I said, what universities are the best ones for being a CA? And I found out that, the specific university called University of Waterloo had the best CA program. And so I applied to 3 universities because you were supposed to, but I already knew in my mind that if I didn't get accepted at University of Waterloo, I was just going to go back to school, upgrade my marks, and try again. And so I did get accepted. I got into the program, was very, very high, except like you had to have a minimum of an 88 average to get in. So I got in, I was very happy, and I just kept on that path. It was kind of like, okay, CA, this is what I need to do. And I went all the way through. I scored on the highest. The exams to be a CA have only about a 56% pass rate, and I was in the top 10. So I was very, very grateful. I did very well. And again, it was just that focus, the vision, the ability to kind of keep to a path, I think was what kind of kept me going.
Sorry. Yeah, it's I love that that sort of it's more than a survivor gene. It is a thrive gene. It's sort of, despite all the adversity, you've still managed to to pull out the top 10. You're undoubtedly sort of pushing ahead, which is amazing.
Yeah, and it was a fun time because we got married. So I became a Christian partway through university, and we had been living together, and so figured out that that was probably not a cool thing if you want to be a Christian. So we decided to not live together for a year. I went back to university alone. My husband stayed with his parents in Toronto. Then we got married in my last year, just before my master's year. So I have a master's degree. And so just before the final year of school, we got married. I had a 1-year internship before I finished my year. I got pregnant on my honeymoon, wouldn't you know it? So 9 months and 5 days after I got married, I had a baby boy in my hands, and I went back to university to finish my master's degree with a 3-month-old. So I had to nurse all the way through that final year. Again, I look back and I think this is craziness, but somehow it all worked out.
So you were like, what, 22, 21, 22?
I was married at 21 and I had my baby when I was 22.
Wow. Christian, married, university,
Yeah,
baby.
baby. Yeah, that was quite I just remember like literally every waking moment, like going to Shoppers Drug Mart, I felt guilty if I had to go to the store. Like I was like, I should be studying, I should be studying. So I obviously had to heal from that afterwards, that kind of need to always do something. But yeah, it got me through. So I'm grateful for that.
I was even curious there in the language you used, about, your choice of university, and and you use the language saying you knew it in your mind.
Mhm.
It's like there was no second choice, although there was three on the list. There's no, that was it. It was that or nothing.
Yeah.
And the focus and the drive you were showing at that point is pretty spectacular. You were clear in what you wanted.
Yeah, I think maybe part of the competition is in there is kind of like it has to be the best, right? So I've always had that mindset. Like even when I would get marks, I would get my paper back, and my teacher would say, "Oh, you did really well," and it would be like 88 or something. I'd be 88. I should get minimum 90, and I would go back and I would argue for those last marks because I wanted it. I don't know. I don't know what that's called, but that's in me.
Is it linked back to the pleaser where you're trying to perfect things, or you're trying
Perfectionism, I think, is something I had to heal from, for sure.
to?
Probably something I'm still healing from. I know I've healed from that, because you can't be a really good entrepreneur and be a perfectionist. A lot of what we do is throw things up against the wall and see what sticks. And so I do have that part of me as well, gratefully.
The spaghetti test, I love it.
Spaghetti test, yeah, it works. And I'm gluten free, which makes it even, more challenging. But yeah, so I do a lot of that, and I'm still okay with it. So I think, I'm healing from the perfectionism tendencies, because before it used to define me. How well I did defined me. Now it's just, I just want to do my best because, well, why not? So I feel like there's been a mind shift, but I definitely feel like it was an unhealthy part of me at one point.
Mm. No, it's amazing how you shift, and as you say, if you've managed to go through and actually find out what way your brain works and how you applied logic at that time as well. Super
Yeah.
interesting. So you're in your final year. You've got a 3-month-old. You're nursing it. You're doing it. You're living life. You're really sort of
Living some
you're
life.
ticking all the boxes here. You're straight out of the woods here. I love it.
Yeah,
You got through the final year then.
I did. Yeah. I
And
got
how
my
was that?
master's in accounting.
So you're coming out. You've got your account. So you qualified with, was it general accounting or tax accounting at that time?
So what my degree from university is separate from my designation. So what happened is I got my degree, and my degree was a Master of Accounting specializing in tax. So
Okay.
in your master's year, you're able to specialize in audit or tax. I really just wanted to specialize in tax. It sounds crazy, but I actually enjoyed it. So that's what I did. And I finished that. And then a month after I graduated, I had to then write my CA exams, now CPA. So it's a 16-hour exam, 4 hours a day for 4 days. And that's what I had to spend the rest of my time preparing for after I graduated. So then that's where I got in the top 10 on that test, on the CA exams. And so then I went on to work after that, and I worked in a tax department from then on. So I didn't really enjoy the auditing part of my job. So I really enjoyed the tax part. I found like it was really where I wanted to go. So that's what I ended up doing. And I became a senior corporate tax manager, specializing initially in financial institutions like banks, mutual funds, insurance companies. And then I moved on to general corporate tax so that I could be more of a part-time schedule.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, fair play to you. I mean, you're juggling all this as well, with kids, because I mean, I'm assuming they're obviously with the age spread as well. So, 25, 26 number two's on the way, and shortly
Yes.
after that, so
Yep.
you're high achieving all the way. Like, I love it. You're making the
Yeah.
most of it.
You make it sound so good. At the time, it was kind of like, oh, this is happening again. All right, then. So it was kind of more like juggling, making sure that nothing crashes down. That's what it felt like.
I think as my dad used to say, is like, listen, you'll never, there's never a good time to have a kid. You just have to do it. It's like,
Exactly.
because everyone goes, yeah, we'll do it when we've done this, or we've got the mortgage, or we've paid this, or we've got that, and then we'll have a kid. It's like, nope.
There's never a good time. No.
Yeah.
It's the same with my business, actually, because when people start working with me, my business, they'll say the same thing. They're like, oh, well, I have this happening and that happening. It's like, perfect, great time to start. The best day to plant a tree is today. So let's just get going.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, I'm sure you look back in your own life and go, God, how did I do all that? It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, but I'm so grateful for it.
So how did you find adapting then to the world of work and corporate world as such?
When I started my job, I guess, so it's so funny because I think because I was so focused on pleasing others and just getting things done and doing what was best and what was right and blah, 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 I never really stopped to ask myself, am I happy? It
Mm.
just never entered my mind. I just did what I needed to do and I put my nose to the task. And so when I started my job, I just wanted to do my best, right? So I did very well. I never got any bad performance ratings. I did very well at my job. I switched jobs a couple of times to get to PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is one of the largest CPA firms in the world. And I, enjoyed what I did for the most part, in the sense that I seemed to be checking all of the mental boxes that I had.
Mm.
So great salary, great benefits, but eventually got a house, had kids. I was checking all the boxes of this is what I need to do. And it wasn't until many years later that I stopped to think, well, what do I want to do? So I guess I adjusted well would be the answer, other than having to take time off to have children. That was a thing.
So sorry, what age were you then when you sort of deciding exactly what you want to do and what you have to do? What age were you then? And
I guess I would have been, if you're probably just what you talk about, what, 37-ish,
mm,
to, yeah, around 37. My kids were, getting older. I felt like I was done. I wasn't, clearly. I still had a fourth to come, but I felt like I was done. And I just really felt, you know what? I'm not happy. I'm away from my kids a lot more. I wanted to homeschool. I know that sounds crazy. I did. So I homeschooled my three children when I had my third. So when I gave birth to my third, I homeschooled the older two. And then when my youngest became 4 years old, I homeschooled her for kindergarten. So I homeschooled all three of them for a few years, but I had to go back to work because we had a financial need and so on. And so I think that's when I started realizing that I was really missing out, because I had had another life,
mm,
being home, homeschooling, spending more time doing other things other than work. I wasn't the, corporate mom all the time. I had to adjust to being a stay-at-home mom. And even though that was an adjustment mentally, I actually enjoyed it. And it just really got me thinking, do I really want to, at the end of my life, am I going to say, gee, I wish I would have spent more time in the office? And I just started thinking, no, I'm probably not going to say that. I'm missing out on a lot of stuff with my kids, and I don't want this anymore.
mm. It's yeah, it's amazing how it all evolves, and you
Mhm.
come to that stage that I don't know. I can only speak for myself that I don't know whether you get to a stage in life where you kind of going, I don't really care what anyone else thinks anymore. You realize that you've only you to back yourself, and you kind of go, well, if I want to go to the shop in my slippers, then I can do.
Yeah.
It's I don't really care anymore what's happened in the past, and is gone. So
Yeah, because they won't be around when you really need things.
mm,
So
yeah,
don't worry about they.
exactly. It's like, yeah, they're not going to put food on the table or pump into my pension.
Yeah.
But interested, talk to me about homeschooling. So, you've come from a CPA sort of tax specialist, and you've gone from there to mm, a fair play to you. I couldn't do it. I mean, we've had the COVID, obviously, and I've been trapped in the house with my three kids, and I love my kids, but I'll be glad to see them go back to school.
Yeah. Yeah.
What sort of appealed to you about homeschooling?
So I loved the idea because I was around some other families that did it, and I kind of liked what they did. I loved the approach that learning was something that happened all hours of the day and not, from 9 to 3 or whatever the school hours were. I had a philosophical reason to want to homeschool my kids because I didn't necessarily like what they were learning from a spiritual perspective, I guess, in schools.
Okay.
So for a lot of different reasons, I really wanted to try this. And you know, I guess for me, my approach is anything that interests me, I'll try once.
Mhm.
You know, so I've done a lot of crazy things just to try it, and some of things I will never return to again, like doing the bungee jump swing. Nope, nope, do not like that. Won't do that again. But there are
Why
things that
not?
no, I'm afraid of heights. So
How
um,
the hell did you end up doing a bungee swing if you're afraid of heights?
I figured, well, how bad could it be? I just have to get over myself. But no, I didn't enjoy it. So,
Well,
yeah,
hats off to you. At least you know you've tried it. As I say to anyone, it's like, well, you only have a right to an opinion if you've tried it.
that's right. You know, I know I hate it. Yeah, so I tried homeschooling and I actually loved it. I loved the whole experience of learning. I was learning along with my kids. Like, I didn't know that baby whales drank milk. Like, this was cool. I had no idea. Where did I not learn this? So I learned along with my kids. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed kind of, I tried to make it really interesting. So when we were learning about American history, we went and we actually visited the place of the Boston Tea Party, and we threw the tea into the sea, you know. So we got to do a lot of exciting things together as a family because of the homeschooling journey. And I didn't have to worry about, oh, am I taking them out of school when they shouldn't be, you know. So I enjoyed that. But then, you know, I had to go back to work and had to kind of leave that behind. I homeschool now today, and I'm really grateful for that. I use a different curriculum that doesn't require so much of my energy because I still run a very successful business. But in the room where I'm doing this, my son would normally homeschool right beside me here.
That's that's awesome. Is there an element almost of trying to through homeschooling is like give yourself a childhood you never had?
I think that there is a huge part of that when I look at
Mm.
even, and it's actually been a recent healing journey for me, is learning how to let go of my kids. Because I think I
Oh
was
my God, you're not one of
investing.
these hover parents, are you? These helicopter parents.
Am I hover? Well, I can't be a hover parent because like they're not in the house. But I realized that emotionally, I kind of did hover.
Mm,
You know, like
sure.
in the sense that I realized I invested so much into them. Like I wanted them to have like, so my girls did competitive dance and my son was in competitive swimming. Like I wanted them to have art classes and all of these experiences, all the things really that I didn't have. And I wanted them to have this exposure and really, really worked hard to make their childhood amazing.
Mm,
Homeschooling, I'm sure, is part of that. But I realized recently that, you know, they get to an age where you have to emotionally let go because they start making decisions that you're not cool with. Your emotions get dragged along with those decisions. And you have to kind of be a little bit more like, well, I'm going to have to cut that tie because I can't be dragged into every
mm,
unhelpful, unhealthy thing that they do. So that's been a recent journey.
mm. So that's, I suppose you're almost, given your background, understandably, you know, it's almost accepting that the slate's clean for them, and what a privilege. You know, you've sort of kept it clean for them. But
Mhm.
again, they're going to do things because of their belief system and all the rest. But
Exactly. But
it's
you do
different.
feel a lot of guilt. It's really easy to go into guilt parenting where you do things because you feel guilty. And then what then happens is, you know, they make a bad decision. And of course, given the type of person that I am, I think I'm hyper responsible. So I would then try to think, what did I do wrong? You know,
Mm.
what could I have done better as a parent? And I would be like trying to fix things, you know, like, oh, I should have done more of this. I should have done better at that. I have to apologize to them for this. And then you start to realize, you know what? Damn it, I did a really good job and they're just making really screwed up decisions and that is not my issue. So there is a place for that.
That's it. Spin them up and let them go. You know, it's like, yeah.
Exactly.
Eventually, you get to that stage. No,
You
it's
have to let go.
so 4 years. You sort of found yourself you know back into the work environment then.
Mm-hmm.
And were you back at the you know the tax the CPA tax?
Yep. Yeah, and that's when I made the shift from financial institutions. I shifted out of that into more general business tax because I wanted a part-time schedule.
Hmm.
And the part-time schedule was only possible if I didn't have regular clients. And so I went to a general corporate tax, and I had a department that I oversaw. And it was considered to be, a CLM, which you may know is a career limiting move.
Okay.
uh, it wasn't the glorified position of being in financial institutions or international tax, but I took the CLM because I had a bigger vision. I wanted to be more balanced in my life, wanted to spend more time with my family, and I knew I couldn't do that with a really high profile CPA jobs.
Did you does the career limiting decision, did that sort of come onto your scale? Was it merely function of going, I need the money? It's the money and that, as opposed to, yeah, I want to go to the top of the ladder, as you talked about previously, of going, how do I get to the top of this tree? What was your driver at that point,
Yeah, and that's interesting because my previous driver would have been, what's the best, right? How can I get the highest? How can I get the best? But again, this was about the time when you start doing some more reflection, coming back to work after having been home. I'm in financial institutions, realizing, I want to have a more part-time schedule. I want to be home more. I know that, and like I was warned, I had a mentor who was a partner of the firm, who was a really good friend of mine. And he's like, Kimberly, if you do this, like, you're gonna be really limiting your options for the future. And he kind of made it really scary. At the time, the department that I went into had a really bad reputation, really bad quality work. You'll be glad to know that by the time I left, they had a really good reputation.
know?
But they had a really, really bad reputation. It was like the hellhole of the whole CPA, or the whole PricewaterhouseCoopers tax department. And like, it was just painted off into this awful thing. But I started reprioritizing, right? So it was like, okay, maybe I'm not going to get the partnership, all that, being offered to me again, because that was an option already. But do I really want it? Because when I look at the partner's offices, that one's divorced, that one's cheating on his wife with his secretary, that one doesn't talk to his kids. Like, do I really want this? And I started thinking to myself, no, I don't. And now I can go back and visit them and say, oh, how much do you make? So obviously the move I made was really good financially, like, to leave and do what I do now. But that wasn't my motivation initially. My motivation was just, I want balance. I want my family. That's my priority, because at the end of my life, I'm not going to wish I worked more.
And it's funny in the corporate world how addictive that is, and it's almost the skill set of the big corporates, the big blue chips and all the rest. It's kind of going, we paint the picture in the firm, you'll always be part of the firm, and 40 years, man and boy, it's boy to man, and yeah, it's fair play to you for spotting that just because it's the office and all the rest, you get the the nice view out of the window. Doesn't make it right.
No, it doesn't. And then
Yeah.
that's what you have to ask yourself. Do you really want that?
Mm.
So I retire, with having been a partner, and now I've got more money and a property that I've never visited in the country because I'm working all the time. So it didn't add up to me. I guess the good thing was that I was able to sit back and reflect for that period of time when I was away from work.
Mm.
And I had that advantage.
Mm. So where'd you go to then?
So that's when I went to that tax department, and really, I loved the team that I got to work with. They really did have quality issues, and so we had meetings every single week. I really poured myself into raising up the team to higher quality work. Really worked on investing in hiring new staff, and I had really high standards for the staff that I hired. So by the time I left, I'm really kind of proud to say I almost worked myself out of a job, because I had trained the staff so well that they really didn't need me anymore. I sensed it, and the places where I could go in the firm were appealing in a way, but the most appealing option was to leave.
says with a big smile on her face. I love
Yes, three.
it.
Yeah. Think back and I think, God, like here, outside my door is my pool and my hot tub, and I can sit in my backyard and work. And I travel all the time. I mean, I was just in Hawaii before everything got crazy and closed down, for my business. And this is what I get to do. And I make more money now in a month than I made in a year. And so, like, why would I want to have stayed? But you don't know that when you make the first step. You don't know what the journey is going to look like. I made the journey for other reasons, but the finances followed. And so that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So you got, almost getting to that tipping point of that, listen, don't waste a good crisis. Here's a good midlife crisis that always shakes things up a bit. But it's great if you shift your goals from from money to finance to significance almost, it's amazing to hear that.
Yeah, and I prioritize my family, and I'll never regret that decision. Because to this day, even though I'm having to let go of my kids to some extent, I can look back and think of all of the happy times, like all of the things that I've invested into them. And I could say, that I've done well. And again, this isn't about lifting me up, but it's about, I made the choices to say, I'm really grateful that I could have invested in my kids the way that I did. So I'm happy for that.
So going out, moving away from the business out on your own, scary time?
It was a scary time. So so fast forward to when I actually started my business, I didn't actually start a business. What I did was buy products from a friend. And, the side story to all of this that I haven't even touched on is my own health journey, because you can imagine that I had some health challenges out of the background that I had. I never really was taught about nutrition. I had chronic skin issues. Like for 40 years of my life, my skin issues were horrific. I don't have a stitch of any blemish anywhere on my skin now at 50 years old. And that's why I'm saying, like, whoa, this is incredible, right? But that whole journey of trying to heal from my issues, my health issues and my kids' issues, that was a side journey to all of this. So when I first bought the products that I now, represent, I actually bought it just because I was doing her a favor. And I thought, well, they're natural. I'm kind of in the natural health world. Why not? And that was my initiation into the product side of this business. But I even told her when I started, don't put me on a mailing list and don't talk to me about the business. I'm not interested. I knew what kind of business it was. I knew it was direct sales. I knew, I had my presuppositions about what direct sales people were like and my bias against them. And of course, as a businesswoman, everybody approached me wanting me to sell their pots or their jewelry or their whatever, right? So I was really clear with her, but I started falling in love with the products, and then that's when it started.
That's awesome. So it's interesting, and what was your presupposition of it, just out of curiosity, beforehand?
So I don't know if this is a common thing in Ireland, but it's a common thing in North America. We get the bait and switch happen, right? So someone invites you over for coffee or for tea, and you think you're just there to just chat, and then out comes this presentation, and then they're suddenly trying to sell you a business, and then you're walking away buying products that you never really wanted, but somehow you got swindled into this thing, and now you're supposed to be, recruiting your friends, and it's like, it just left such a bad taste in my mouth. And so that was my image of direct sales. I've since realized that there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, and that was the wrong way. And I didn't want anything to do with that for clear reasons. And also, I'm a CPA, I'm a tax specialist. I had an image to portray, even if I wasn't working as it. I didn't want to be involved in that,
It's amazing. So I take it then you 2 feet in and head first into the whole world of what do you call it? Direct sales is the proper term?
Direct sales is just the way that the product is distributed. So, I mean,
Mhm.
obviously you can go the traditional method where the person who manufactures sells to an exporter, who then sells to an importer, who sells to a, you know, wholesaler and another wholesaler, blah, blah, blah. And eventually it makes it into the retail store where you buy it. Direct sales just means that the person who manufactures directly sells to the customer,
Mhm.
and there's intermediaries like me who teach people about the products and who get compensated that way. So they forego all of the middlemen.
Mm. So, so hit us then. What was the what's the product?
It's essential oils. And they really, when I first found out about them, I felt like, where have you been all my life? You know, I had been in the natural health world. I had used remedies, herbal remedies. I had used lots of different things. But when I got introduced to essential oils, it was kind of like the missing link, the missing piece. I saw results quicker than I had ever seen them before. I started reading about them and I thought, man, if this is true, everybody needs to know about this because this is too good to keep to myself. And that's literally what got me started on my business. I wasn't even really doing it as a business at the beginning. I just couldn't stop talking about them. I couldn't shut up about them. I was just talking to everybody because what I was learning was so exciting and I was eating up all of this stuff I was learning. And as I was talking and as I was sharing with people and they were trying it and they were getting experiences, I realized, wow, there's something to this. So when the first business opportunity event came up, which was like me and two other people, it was just so tiny because it was very brand new to Canada. I went and I thought, what have I got to lose? I'm home with my
Mhm.
son anyway. Might as well give it a shot. I didn't know what my husband would think about it, but by the time I got home, he had already been doing research on the company and he was just like, oh, this company is amazing. They're debt free. They're this and that. And I was like, really? I kind of joke around with my upline leader now. It's like, you didn't know any of those facts. My husband knew them all. How come he had to tell me? Anyway, so I guess I got kind of excited about it, but what really put the nail on the head, so to speak, was that night I had a dream, and it was a very impactful dream. And I really, you know, it might sound corny, but I just know when I have a dream because I ate too much pizza, and when I have like a really significant dream, and it was one of those really significant dreams.
Mm.
And in the dream, there's this song, and I really heard this song almost being released from heaven, and it was, I'm pouring out the oil of healing, I'm pouring out the oil of joy. And I woke up with the song. I can't remember the song anymore, but I remember the words. Uh, and it really impacted me. And I knew that there was something significant that I needed to be part of.
Wow. Is that is that normal for you? You know, you're saying significant dreams are almost a reoccurring thing for you.
It's not normal, like as in every night or every
Mm.
week. It's I've had significant dreams warning me about things for my kids that I've then prayed into. I've had significant dreams, you know, kind of telling me about something I need to be focused on. So they're very, you know, rare in the sense that they're not, it's a special thing that kind of just stands out on its own. That's why I kind of know when it's a significant one. I dream a lot, but most of my dreams are kind of just me. I can tell it's just me processing stuff,
Sure.
but there's sometimes there's something about it.
I'm curious as well because you mentioned a while back, you know, and even when you were choosing for your university, you know, it was almost visualization, and you know, this is what I would sort of call dreaming a form of visualization as such. You know, is that something that takes part in your life? Is that something that's been there
Oh,
for
it's
you?
huge. It's huge. I honestly believe, okay, so I love to use this example with my team, but my son is a Lego crazy guy. So and he's not the kind of Lego person who will get a kit, put it together, and then he's done. He'll get a kit, put it together, and then 15 minutes later, he's pulling it apart, which drives me crazy because I would be the Craggle person, you know, trying to glue it. It's like, no, it's perfect, don't touch it. But he just loves to make things. And he will literally sit in front of a pile of Lego, like a massive pile of Lego, and his hands just start working, and they work and they work and they work and they work. And then an hour later, he'll have this incredible puzzle box where you pull this piece out and it becomes a key that then you put in here, and does all these crazy things. And I think, whoa, like he doesn't have any plans. He just does it. And to me, that's the perfect image of our lives, that every day we're given this like pile of Lego, so to speak, in terms of the minutes of our day. And we can use those to create so many amazing things. But it's important because when was that Lego block finished? It was finished in his mind before he even started making it. And so I believe visualization is absolutely key. I believe that we need to start our day out that way. We need to start our, journey in our business out that way. When we can get an image of our mind, we will then subconsciously work toward creating it. But it happens for good and for bad. So it's really important that we don't meditate upon those things which are negative, those things which are, horrific. If we have those things, pray into them, release them, speak blessing over them, but work toward the positive. So definitely visualization is key.
I'm curious, work away from the negative. I mean, how do you spin a negative into a positive?
So I'll give you an example. When my son was little, I would put him to bed, and almost every night I had these images in my mind. It's kind of common with parents about something horrible happening to him. Like, it's awful to think about, right? But like, I would have this image of something horrible happening to him. And I know that it was coming from like a deep-seated fear of me losing him, of, just whatever. Who knows exactly where it comes from? Is there spiritual influence? Like, who knows, right? I believe that we have the power to decree, there's a proverb that says, decree a thing and it will be established. So many people mistakenly and unwittingly decree a thing that will be established that's a negative thing. Like, oh, I always get sick. I'm always late. They'll make these decrees that then you subconsciously go to create. If we get an image in our mind that is negative, like I did when I put my son to bed, it's really important that I decree the opposite. So I decree blessing over you. Peace is going to come into your heart and your mind. You are always going to be protected. You're going to have a hedge of protection around you. And, you're going to be blessed when you go in and blessed when you go out, blessed when you lie down, blessed when you stand up. And I just start decreeing blessing over that situation. And it just almost eliminates entirely. Now, it doesn't mean that it doesn't come up again the next night and I have to do it all over again, because I'm dealing with something clearly internally as well. But it's so important just to decree. And I often talk about walking in the opposite spirit. Whenever something negative is coming against us, like if we feel like, I don't know, being stingy, or we feel like criticizing, it's so important to walk in the opposite spirit. So, give money generously when you feel like being stingy. Give a compliment when you feel like criticizing. Anyway, those are just random thoughts, but
That makes sense. I mean, do you practice then? Do you practice mantras or affirmations, or?
Every morning I do affirmations. I call them declarations. I have even my son that has a book of decrees, and it's really, really important. And every time when he goes to bed, he calls it blessing time. So I speak a blessing over him, and I ask him what needs to be blessed today. And sometimes he'll say, that his hands, and sometimes he'll say, my generosity or my friendliness. So I just speak a blessing into what he feels like he needs a blessing for. It. I feel like it's really important.
No, listen, I mean, it obviously rings true. And for you, then, obviously would you classify yourself as religious and then spiritual? And then is there a difference?
There is a huge difference. I think it's possible to be religious and be disconnected from God because religion is often caught up in the form. So, do I think it's important to pray to an idol or whatever? Like, those kinds of things are not part of my life. I believe that God's presence, like one of the things that I've been teaching, I teach a Bible study, and one of the things that I teach is the true definition of church. The Greek word church is ekklesia, and ekklesia is a gathering. It's actually a body of ruling people who rule is the ekklesia. And Jesus said, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. So I believe a church is 2 or 3 people gathered in his name. And we can pray, we can decree, we can walk in authority. So in this whole time where people have been restricted and not being able to go to church, they can still go to church because it only takes 2 or 3. And so I feel like, yes, I am hugely connected. I'm hugely believe that my relationship with God is central to my life. I don't really like the word religion just because of the negative connotation to it.
No, it is interesting. But then on the spiritual side, on the spiritual and universal energy side, I mean, how much of that do you tend to sort of practice to as such?
So I believe in a much more personal God. So I believe in the Christian God. There's Father and there's Son and there's Holy Spirit. So Holy Spirit clearly is everywhere. He's within me. I can be filled with the Spirit, so I can have a greater measure of Holy Spirit within me, which will help me to manifest the fruit of the Spirit in a greater measure. But I don't believe that God is in everything in the sense of pantheism. I believe he created everything. And because he created everything, he's everywhere, but it's not the same as pantheism, if that makes sense. So I don't refer to the universe because I think it's too impersonal. I refer to God as my Father. A relationship with God. I look at it as a relationship and not just an energy.
Nice. I like it. So take us back. So your essential oils then, I take it obviously just went from strength to strength, did it?
Yeah, it was kind of a curious journey because the oils themselves were powerful. I was loving what I was learning, but I'm a CPA, tax specialist. I'm not a salesperson. And so it was a struggle for me. And you have to know that one of my number one fears is the fear of rejection, or used to be, right? I've been working through that. So you can imagine here I'm in this position where I'm trying to build a business selling essential oils. I'm not a salesperson and I'm afraid of rejection. Like, not a great combination. So what cured it for me, if you want to know, is that I started realizing that there's no fear in love, that perfect love drives out fear. It's actually 1 John in the Bible. So I realized that the more that I was focused on love, the less I was walking in fear. And that when I was fearful, it's because my focus was on myself, because love is not self-seeking. And so if I was focused on myself and on what people thought of me and would they accept me and would they like what I was saying and did I do a good enough job, well, then I was fearful. But when I focused on them and what did they need and how could I serve them, well, then the fear went away. And so as I started to tap into that and I realized the power of these oils that I was holding in my hand, I really wanted them to have it. I really believed in it. And I just started functioning from that place. And the more that I did that, the more that my business thrived. And then I'm really good at raising up other leaders to do what I do, because I've always asked this question of my team: what's the purpose of an apple tree? And almost everybody answers, to make apples, to which I get to say, no. Because the purpose of an apple tree, if it were only to make apples, well, then after that apple tree died, there'd be no more apples in the world. The ultimate purpose of an apple tree is to create another apple tree and another apple tree and another apple tree. And so what I do in my business is I create apple trees. I duplicate myself. I create other people that do what I do. And that's what creates residual income for my business, because I don't have to be working hard all the time because I've got team members that work hard. But it also is what empowers other people, because I pour myself into them. I, fertilize, so to speak. I help to create a tree so that they can flourish and they can in turn duplicate themselves.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that analogy. It's very clever. It's it goes through. So I mean, from that, and I mean, it's weird. It's only recently I've sort of realized that everyone's in sales,
Yes.
including my, my sort of 1.5-year-old twins. I mean, they're sales expert. They get what they want.
It's like, they're the best at it, man. You should put the product in their hand. I'm sure that they do well.
They're so manipulative, but no, it's good. I think once you almost take that attitude of, listen, people go, oh, I'm not a salesperson. It's like, yeah, everyone is. If you're trying to persuade something, you want something, you do something, you're sales. So you're sort of falling into your role, and you're taking ownership of that, right? So you're from that, you're able to actually then build.
And the funny thing is that I avoided partnership at my CPA firm because I didn't like the sales aspect of the job. And I leave and I go into sales. So I think it's kind of ironic, but it's different. It's different. It feels different. I feel like I'm doing something that I'm so passionate about because it's contributing to people's financial, physical, emotional, spiritual, even health. You know, I have an opportunity to connect with team members, to coach them even in areas that they're struggling in. You know, one of my team members is actually going to go through that Restoring the Foundations ministry week that I just talked about. She's going through it this weekend because you know, after telling her long enough, these are issues you need to deal with, she's finally taking the brave step to deal with them. So I have such an opportunity to affect people in a positive way. What's not to love about that? You know, it's a lot of responsibility on the one hand, but as long as you have really good boundaries, it's such a beautiful thing to see other people rise up and to become more of what they're created to be. I can't imagine a better gift.
Mm. No, it is. It's a very interesting and funny. I was chatting to someone the other day, and she's a web developer, but they talk about faith statements. I don't know whether you've ever done
Okay.
this, you know,
Yeah.
but for her, she'd taken the decision on like say being a web developer on her sort of product site, if you like, of putting on the faith statement, you know, because
Okay.
some of the organizations she worked with wanted her to sort of openly declare it, but she was saying it's actually strengthened her business. What sort of
Oh, good.
started out as you know, something to almost please the client became a massive bonus, which I thought was interesting, you know, when the two worlds collide.
Yeah, it is interesting. But I think this is a big part of it too. And I've seen the people who are, you know, kind of co-partners with me, like not necessarily in my business on my organization, but doing my business kind of beside me. So they're
Mhm.
building their own business. And I've seen some of them make this decision to really try to be inclusive of everybody in the sense of, you know, when they speak, they don't want to mention the word God or Jesus or whatever because they don't want to make anybody offended. And I've always taken the route that, listen, if you come to me and you are a Buddhist, I love you. You know, I'm going to accept you for who you are, but I can't talk as if I believe in the universe because that's not me, and I'm not being true to me if I try to make you feel better by adjusting who I am. You know, I wouldn't want you to do that for me, and I don't want to do that for you. So when people come to me for mentorship, they're going to hear, you know, me talk about God. They don't have to accept it, but I can't talk out of something that's not me. Obviously, I'm not
Mhm.
going to try to, you know, convert or preach at
Mhm.
them if that's not what they're looking for. That's not what they're coming to me for. But I can't. I'm always going to bring up a Bible verse because there's so much wisdom there, right? Something's going to come out, and I have never found it to be an issue. I think people really respect the fact that I can be strong and confident in who I am, and it gives them the strength to be who they are.
Mm. I'm so curious because for me the telltale, you know, when you talked about, you know, sales in your last job and sales in this job, but you know, when you came across the essential oils and how, you know, your passion and almost how you wouldn't shut up about it, you know, and you'd tell
Exactly.
anyone that what was even potentially likely to listen, you're going to tell them. And to me,
Exactly.
that's almost like a fire in the belly. It's, you know, that is where you just hit a passion, you hit a, you know, a purpose. And as you say, living by your passion, that was one of your initial key words. And it's amazing when you find that, and you know, you'll break your own rules of I don't do sales. Yes, I do now
I
because
do.
I
Yeah.
believe,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know.
and that fire in the belly has kind of morphed a little bit because what happened is I'd have people come to me with this laundry list of issues. Like I've got diabetes, I've got hypertension, I've got, you know, fibromyalgia and asthma and allergies. And I'd be like, and you're still alive. Wow. You know, but they would always come to me with this question. And the question was, what oil can I use? And I'm thinking, dude, you are expecting a lot from an oil. Like you just listed this whole thing. And so the fire in my belly has become not just educating people about essential oils, as awesome as they are, but educating them about lifestyle choices, about what are they putting in their mouth? How are they moving their body? What is their thinking? Because if you have stinking thinking, it's going to affect your health. And so we have to be looking at all of these aspects. And I think the biggest fire in my belly is that
Mm.
and that's the, life more abundantly. It's the bigger picture. It's not a one string, that you're tweaking off. It's an orchestra of many, many different instruments all playing at the same time. And I feel like that's the biggest fire in my belly.
Mm. Wow, I love it. So the
Mhm.
essential oils you still, you're doing obviously to this day, and it's grown. I take it.
Yeah, I'm really grateful. My business is now 42 countries, and that's just my business. That's not, the company I represent. That's just me, and that's because apple trees, right? So people producing apple trees all over. They're planting their seeds and they're growing in all these different countries, and we have about, I guess, 2.5 million US in sales every month. So
Wow.
pretty cool. Yeah. And the greatest thing about that is that people are, that it's not just like a one-time order. Because if I was just selling a bunch of oils and people had them sitting on their shelves, then that wouldn't really make me feel that great. But we have 70% retention, which means that they're ordering over and over and over again because they've been educated and they've been empowered, and they understand that, maybe they need enzymes, or maybe they need supplements, or maybe they can clean with something that's not going to be toxic for them, or use skincare that's not toxic. And so I love that we've created a community that's empowered, to, especially in a day and age where we don't know whether everything that we're hearing from mainstream is reliable, right? I want people to have education. I want them to have tools that they can use to take their health back in their own hands, because it's so important that people feel empowered to do that and not wait for them to be dependent upon somebody else.
Mm. Absolutely, it's great. It's great. It's a great way to look at it, and it's great to be in that position in your life also to to really feel that, and as you say, have the tools to make the difference.
Hmm.
It's powerful.
I think so.
So tell me, I mean, what happened then with the property then? Where did you get to with it?
Oh yeah, that thing. Oh yes. So we decided that we finished it, thankfully, and we wanted to sell it. And I have to tell you, like it was in, those images of Canada that it always snows and it's never Christmas, like so that's what it felt like up there. It was like in the snow belt of this part of Ontario, constantly cold, windy. I hated it there. It was this tiny little town, which I think, I just never wanted to get out of anywhere more than I wanted to get out of that place. And so I was desperate to sell this place. Like, please, somebody just buy this house. My husband had done a great job renovating it, but it really was an old house. It kind of still smelled a little stinky. We weren't sure what was going to happen. Did the roof need to be changed? Like, there was just so many, but we finally sold it. So, so grateful for that. And then we were trying to buy another house, only to find out like a week before we were supposed to close the deal, or not a week, maybe a month before we're supposed to close the deal. Yeah, it was a month, that it was, we had the house inspection done, and it was basically a money pit. Like, it would have been horrific. So we had to walk away from that. We had to walk away from our deposit. That was not going to happen. But then we had a month to find a place. And the place where we actually live right now, it just came up for sale on the same weekend that we walked away from that place. So I feel like even that was kind of ordered.
Mm.
So when we came here, it was like, I always laughed that the square footage of our deck was the same square footage as the house. So it's so much more space. Originally, we thought we were going to have to rent part of the house out just to be able to stay here, but my business started thriving, didn't need to. So now we are in a land of abundance. Grateful, very grateful.
Oh wow, I love it. And that's how you've ended up where you are today, and your journey. I love it.
Yeah, it's a lot there.
How do you feel looking back? What's your overall take on where you've got to?
Yeah, I think I mentioned the word grateful. I think that really is. Um, I feel like there was a part of my life when I would have looked back and felt sorry for myself.
Mm.
But now I look back and all I can feel is grateful. I see how every aspect of my life has formed me in one way or another. And, even the difficult things, I believe that it all works together for good if you make the right decisions. It's not a necessary conclusion that it always works out for good, but with the right decisions, it does work out for good. And I can't help but feel anything but gratitude for everything that's happened, for where I am. And it's not even just, if I had just got to where I am by myself, where we're walking in abundance, I think it would have been great, but I think it would have been empty. But what makes it so full, so vibrant, so exciting is that as I rose, I brought a whole lot of people up with me. People who at one time they were getting their, hydro bills cut off. They couldn't afford to buy even mitts for their kids for their winter time. And to see and other people who were involved in mission work who could never get enough money for their mission, or even if it's just somebody who wanted to take a family vacation who could finally do that, to see other people rise with me. And I'm mentioning the financial aspects, but that's only one small part of it. It's the growth that's happened in their lives. It's the transformation and their sense of purpose being revived. All of that. Like, how could I look upon this and see anything but gratitude for what's happened? So yeah, grateful.
That's an amazing perspective. That's what I was going to say, and in summary, what is your fire in the belly then?
My fire in the belly, out of everything that I said, I've said a lot of things, but if I were to give a word, it would be the word hope. My fire in the belly is to let people know that there's hope. No matter what their situation, no matter what their circumstance, no matter what their past has been, that there's always hope. And whether that is hope for their financial situation, hope for their physical situation. Like I run into lots of people who've got some pretty bad, physical things happening, and they need hope because they're not getting it from the medical world. So I want people to have hope. I want them to know that anything truly is possible if they will just believe. And so I guess that's my fire, is to let people know that there's hope. The human spirit is so able to overcome so much. I mean, like, you think about my story as being hard compared to the horrific stories that I've been connected to, people who've been involved, who've been trafficked, human traffic. I can't even imagine. And yet the ability of the human spirit to overcome is absolutely phenomenal if they're given that one thing, and that's hope.
That's beautiful. Guilty pleasure.
Guilty pleasure. Oh dear, scuba diving with chocolate. Maybe not at the same time. I love scuba diving. I love swimming. I love being in the water. And if chocolate is close by, you know what?
Okay, let's start with the good stuff. Chocolate. What type? What's the scenario? Where are you? And what are you drinking it with?
I'm not an alcohol person. I sometimes wish I could be, but like my kids make fun of me all the time because I will sniff alcohol. I will take a little tiny sip and I will be laughing my head off. So like, I'm just not good with alcohol.
You know what we call a cheap date?
A cheap date. I'm a very cheap date. Like, seriously, my daughter's got videos of me, like, you would think that I had just drank like a bottle of wine and I literally had 2 sips and I was just like laughing my head off. Anyway, it's hilarious. So yes, very cheap date. So I don't drink chocolate with too much, but I love dark chocolate. I love especially raw dark chocolate, fair trade, like all that good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit of a chocolate connoisseur. So don't give me the cheap chocolate. I have a friend who keeps bringing me chocolate every time, and I say, okay, stop buying the chocolate from Walmart, okay, because I don't eat that chocolate. I don't like the big brands. I'm a connoisseur. So if someone buys me chocolate from like a little shop that they make it themselves right on the spot, I love that. I love, I don't know if you know this, but chocolate actually picks up the flavors of what it's grown with. So I love to be able to discern the flavors. So the last chocolate someone brought me, it tasted like bananas, even though there's no banana in it, because it's grown with bananas. So I love that. I love experiencing different kinds of dark chocolate and just really enjoying it like a fine wine. That's how I like it. And if I'm going to drink, then I want to drink hot chocolate with cinnamon and chili. really good.
Wow. Now you're talking. That's a proper hot chocolate.
Uh-huh. Yep. None of that milky stuff, with mostly water. No, no, no. We got thick chocolate happening there.
I was going to say, if ever you get a chance to do a lot of the Christmas markets in Austria and stuff like that, that's you get a lot of that. Yeah,
That would be a dream. I would love to.
yeah. Can't. What about the snorkeling though? Where are you going with the snorkeling?
It's actually scuba
The
diving.
scuba diving, sorry.
I,
Yeah.
I do snorkel as well in Hawaii. I love to snorkel. Scuba diving isn't the best in Hawaii because it's so many waves, right?
Okay.
But scuba diving in Cozumel, Mexico, I loved it there. I did scuba diving in the Bahamas, absolutely gorgeous, pristine. It's so funny because I come back from a scuba diving trip one time and I was telling my friend, how much I loved it. It's like, it's incredible. There was like schools of fish all around me. I was right in the middle of them. And there was a shark over there. And they're like, I'm explaining like this, and her face goes white and her jaw drops. And she's like, that's my worst nightmare. And it's like, no. I just love it. It's so peaceful. It's a really good chance to just, reflect on the beauty. You feel like you're flying. So I think that's pretty cool. Because if I had like a wish, it would be that I could fly. That would be it.
Wow, I love it. Yeah, it's the freedom. I'm sure you could read more into that. It's the freedom and the ability to move, but
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
so tell me, Kimberly, how can people reach out to you? How can they get a hold and find out more and follow you?
Well, there are lots of different ways, but two big ones. And the first one would be if they want to connect with me about my products, my business, they can find me at kimberlymilousis.com. And I'm sure that you've got the spelling of that somewhere. So kimberlymilousis.com, they can find about what it looks like to become an apple tree if they want to and do what I do, or if they want to learn about the products, it's all there. For those who are interested in having a more robust journey with me, then I'd invite them to go to my Life More Abundantly course, which is a 10-week journey into abundance in all these different areas. And they can get that at kimm.me/LMA. So kimm.me/LMA. And if they use the code FIRE, they're going to get 20% off.
Perfect. So give us that link again. So kimm.me/LM.
LMA. Life More Abundantly. Exactly.
Awesome. And the code FIRE.
FIRE.
Honestly, that is fantastic. I'm delighted, and it's been such an amazing journey for you to take us through. So thank you for sharing. And
oh, thanks so much, Pete. And you have such great questions. I feel I actually feel more grateful after having done this interview with you. It's not very often that you get a chance to reflect on everything that you've been through. So what a gift that you give people. So thank you for that.
you're welcome. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. And we look forward to hearing more from you in the future as well. So hopefully we'll get you on the boardroom talk as well, so we can hear more about your business.
I love that.
Kimberly, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.